Friday night always carried a quiet routine for our house: bath time for the kids, a lazy scroll through Netflix, maybe some takeout if the week had been brutal. But this Friday wasn't one of those. Rachel was moving with more energy than usual. Her voice had that extra pitch in it, the one she used when she was about to do something she didn't want me asking too many questions about. "We're staying at Kelly's cousin's house," she said, brushing her hair in the hallway mirror. "It's out in the countryside, like almost no signal. Don't panic if I don't text back right away." She looked back at me with a forced smirk, like she'd practiced the line in her head before saying it. I leaned against the doorframe, holding our youngest on my hip. "That far out?" "Yeah," she said, grabbing her weekend bag. "She just got engaged. They're making it into a whole retreat thing. No boys allowed." I gave a small laugh, trying to keep things light. "Just don't burn the house down celebrating." She smiled, kissed the top of our son's head and then mine, quick, like a habit, not a choice, and was gone. About an hour later, I was finishing dishes when my phone buzzed, motion detected at the front door. I wiped my hands and checked the video feed. And there she was. Rachel stepped out of a black sedan I didn't recognize. Not an Uber, too clean. The driver, a guy maybe mid-30s with an easy smile and gelled hair, leaned toward her window, saying something that made her laugh out loud. Not the polite chuckle she gives coworkers, this was full, head-thrown-back laughter. She pulled her suitcase out of the back seat like she'd done it 100 times before, slung her tote over her shoulder, and walked briskly to the front door. Then she glanced up right at the camera and waved. Not at anyone in particular. Just a brief wave, as if to say, "Yes, I know you're watching, and this is nothing." I stood there, staring at the frozen frame. My stomach dropped. I wanted to believe it was nothing. A coworker. A friend's husband helping out. But if that were the case, why lie? Why not mention the ride? She didn't even ring the bell to say goodbye. She just walked around the house and disappeared behind the side gate where her car was parked earlier that day. I hadn't noticed it was gone. She must have moved it herself. 30 minutes later, I got a text. A photo of a fireplace glowing with warm flames, 3 smiling women huddled together, wine glasses raised, feet tucked under thick blankets. "Cozy vibes with my girls, 2 hearts," she wrote. "Might not have service soon." But something about the picture bothered me. It was too composed. The kind of picture people stage, not the kind they casually snap. The background was weirdly sterile, no shoes by the door, no backpacks, no kitchen mess. Just the fireplace and those smiles. I zoomed in. None of the women were Rachel. Not fully. You could see the corner of her shoulder in the bottom corner, but her face wasn't in the frame. The girls in the picture, I'd only ever heard of 2 of them. The third looked vaguely familiar, maybe from work, maybe from Instagram. But what struck me most was that it didn't feel lived in. No one curls up for wine night and forgets the snacks. Still, I didn't reply. What could I say? "Looks fun? Who's the guy from earlier?" I turned the screen off and told myself not to overthink it. She was probably just catching a ride. Probably. But probably started to unravel when I replayed the doorbell footage again. The way she laughed. The way she lingered by the car. The small suitcase. She hadn't mentioned an overnight bag. Not once. If she was staying at a house with friends, why bring so much? The fireplace picture didn't show a bedroom, but the suitcase said she planned to be gone a while. Maybe longer than one night. When she got back on Sunday evening, she acted normal. Too normal. "The hills were gorgeous," she said, dropping her bag by the laundry room. "We did facials, wine, gossip, the usual. I needed that." She kissed my cheek. "Thanks for holding down the fort." Her phone was still in her back pocket. I noticed she didn't plug it into the charger by the nightstand like she usually did. Instead, she kept it on her, texting in little bursts while putting the kids to bed. When I reached to hug her goodnight, she flinched. Not a big movement, just enough to be noticeable. Later, while brushing her teeth, I brought it up casually. "Who was the guy that dropped you off?" "The one in the black car." She didn't blink. "Oh, that's just Connor. He works in finance. Gave me a lift from the train station since Kelly bailed last minute." "Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just didn't recognize him." She wiped her mouth and looked at me in the mirror. "Jake, are we seriously doing this? You're watching the doorbell footage now? Come on. That's a little obsessive, don't you think?" "It's a security camera," I said. "I get the alerts like anyone else. Right?" Her tone was sharp now, edged. "You always do this. One little thing, and suddenly I'm under interrogation." "I asked a question," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "No, you made an accusation," she snapped. "God, you're starting to sound like one of those guys on Reddit. Paranoid, jealous, controlling. Maybe read fewer threads and trust your wife a little more." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went back to our bedroom, but I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and let the unease creep in. Because if asking about a man I'd never met was controlling, then what was lying by omission? If noticing a suitcase or an awkward photo made me paranoid, what did hiding behind a curated image make her? Something didn't fit. And once you see the crack, you can't stop noticing the way the paint peels around it. It's funny how the mind works when it starts pulling threads. One loose end, and suddenly everything you thought was solid begins to unravel. That night after Rachel got back, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the gentle hum of the fan blending with the occasional buzz of her phone on the nightstand. She kept it closer than usual. It used to rest on the dresser, screen up, like it had nothing to hide. Now it lived under her pillow or face down beside her. Always within reach, always silent. I watched her sleep. She looked peaceful. Innocent, even. But peace can be deceptive. I used to think I knew everything about her. How she liked her coffee, the little dance she did when folding laundry, the exact songs she skipped on our road trip playlists. But now I wasn't so sure. That was when the memories started creeping in. Like how she used to get up with the kids on Saturdays so I could sleep in. That stopped about 3 months ago. She started going for early morning runs, coming back flushed and energized. "I'm trying to clear my head," she'd say, toweling sweat from her neck. I didn't question it. Why would I? But the runs didn't always make sense. Sometimes she came back without her water bottle. Sometimes she didn't even sweat, just had that light perfume smell. Like gardenia, but softer. Not the stuff she used to wear. Then there were the skipped family dinners. Rachel used to love hosting. But recently, she'd find excuses. Headaches, work deadlines, just not in the mood. We'd get invites from her sister, her parents, even our neighbors, and she'd say, "You take the kids. I've got some catching up to do." At first, I figured she just needed downtime. But then her location tags would show up elsewhere: wine bars, rooftop lounges, downtown coffee spots. "Tagged by someone else," she'd say. "You know how stories work." Sure. But there's only so many coincidences before they stop feeling like coincidences. I remembered one night in particular. It was supposed to be date night. We'd booked a little cabin near the lake. A place we'd visited years ago, before the kids, before life got complicated. I arranged everything, even got my mom to watch the kids. But 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Rachel canceled. "I don't think it's a good idea," she told me, not quite meeting my eyes. "You need the space more than I need rest." I remember laughing at the time, brushing it off. But that phrase stuck with me: you need space. Like she was stepping back from me. Like I was the one crowding her. All I wanted was a weekend to reconnect, and somehow that turned into a flaw. Even the way she dressed had shifted. She used to throw on joggers and a messy bun for morning drop-offs. Now she curled her hair before school runs. She started ordering clothes I hadn't seen before. New brands, things she didn't even unpack until I wasn't around. At first, I noticed tags on the bathroom counter. Brands I didn't recognize. Sizes that didn't match what she used to wear. When I asked, she brushed it off with a laugh. "Retail therapy," she'd say. "Every mom's guilty pleasure." But Rachel had never been into fashion like that. She also started hitting the gym more, but never the one near our house. "Too many PDA moms," she joked once. Instead, she joined a fitness studio downtown. "More serious trainers," she said. I offered to come along once. "They don't have guest passes," she told me quickly. "And you wouldn't like it. It's really intense." And there was her phone. It was always locked, always face down. And if she got a message while we were talking, she'd pick it up with this strange urgency, swiping it open and holding it close like it was something fragile. One time, I leaned over just to glance at the time, and she snatched it away with a nervous laugh. "Geez, Jake, privacy much?" It was the first time I'd ever felt like a stranger in my own marriage. The worst part? I couldn't even talk about it. If I brought anything up, anything at all, she'd turn it back on me. "Why are you being so weird?" she'd ask. "Is this about your job again? You get so moody when you're stressed." It's amazing how someone can gaslight you with a smile. I started questioning myself. Maybe I was being weird. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was becoming the guy, the insecure husband who reads into everything. I hated that guy. I swore I'd never be him. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. One night, about 2 weeks after the girls' trip, I noticed she'd left her makeup bag on the bathroom counter. She never did that. Rachel was meticulous about her stuff. I wasn't snooping. I just looked. Inside were things I hadn't seen her use before: bright red lipstick, shimmer eyeshadow, false lashes still in their case. I opened one of the smaller zippers and found a little satin pouch with jewelry I'd never seen. A delicate gold bracelet engraved with initials that didn't belong to any of us. That bracelet broke something in me. Not because it was expensive, but because it was secret, hidden, something that didn't belong to the life we shared. I started watching her more closely. Not out of spite, out of fear. She began talking differently. "I'm finding myself," she said one morning while sipping her smoothie. "Sometimes I feel like I've just been playing a role: wife, mom, employee. And I don't even know who I am anymore." I wanted to ask, "And who's helping you figure that out?" But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "I get it." Because that's what you do when you're trying to hold on to someone who's already halfway out the door. Even our bedroom changed. The silence stretched longer. Her side of the bed felt colder. There was a night, maybe a month ago, when I reached out to her, just needing to feel close, and she turned away. "I'm tired," she mumbled. "Long day." But I'd seen her scrolling on her phone until past midnight. And through it all, I kept pretending. Pretending it was stress. Or work. Or the kids. Or some invisible pressure neither of us could name. I gave her space. I gave her patience. I gave her every benefit of the doubt. Because that's what love does, right? But love also knows when something is breaking. And now, looking back, I see it clearly. The signs were there. The laughter that didn't reach her eyes. The excuses. The disappearances wrapped in polite reassurances. The stories that didn't line up. So I started keeping track. Not obsessively. Not like some investigator pinning photos to a corkboard. Just mentally. I noted when she said she was going to a work seminar but didn't post anything about it. I noticed when she took calls in the garage. I noticed when she changed her passwords. I told myself I wasn't going to accuse her of anything without proof. I wasn't going to start a fight just because my gut told me something I couldn't prove. But I also knew deep down that whatever Rachel was going through, she wasn't going through it alone. Someone else was involved. Someone who made her laugh the way I hadn't in months. Someone who made her feel seen when I was just trying to survive. Someone who had become her escape. The thought made me sick. And yet I couldn't look away. Because when you love someone and they start to disappear right in front of you, you hold your breath and wait. You wait for them to return or for the truth to finally catch up. I didn't know which one I'd get. But I knew I was done waiting silently. I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself that maybe I was wrong, maybe I was reading too much into things, that this was just a rough patch, that Rachel was searching for herself, not someone else. I convinced myself of that lie so many times it almost started to feel like the truth. Until the morning after her so-called girls' weekend. The kids were watching cartoons in the living room, cereal bowls in their laps, when I went to reboot the Wi-Fi. The connection had been spotty for a few days and I figured a quick reset might help. Our modems tucked away in the cabinet under the stairs right next to the outlet where Rachel always charged her tablet. I hadn't seen her use it in months. She was always on her phone now. Out of habit, I pressed the power button on the tablet as I leaned over to unplug the router. And it woke up. To my surprise, it was still connected to her home network and her notes app was open from the last time she'd used it. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe a to-do list, something about groceries or work deadlines. What I saw was a travel itinerary. It wasn't for Kelly's cousin's countryside house. It was a flight confirmation. Departed Friday afternoon. Landed in Charlotte. Hotel, the Mason, downtown. Not a single word about Kelly or the girls or a birthday. I just stared at it. A wave of heat rushed over me. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. People change plans. Maybe she'd flown in with her friends. Maybe there was some logical explanation. But then I saw the rest of the note. It had a packing checklist, a link to a restaurant's reservation page, and a little note that read, "Surprise sweet upgrade, Hill Freak. Must remember to ask for extra strawberries." There it was. One word. 3 letters that hit like a wrecking ball. I sat down right there on the floor, the hum of the router buzzing beside me. I opened her photo gallery, heart pounding, palms clammy. I knew I shouldn't. I knew whatever I found would change everything. But I had to know. The photos weren't hidden. They weren't even locked. They were just there, sitting like landmines in plain sight. One showed her on a balcony in a robe, hair loose, eyes squinting against the sun. In the foreground was a fruit platter, 2 champagne glasses, and a room service tray with a note card that read, "Welcome back." In the corner of the frame, subtle, almost out of focus, was a pair of sneakers. Men's. Way too big to be hers. Another photo showed her holding a wine glass at a rooftop bar, mid-laugh. Her face looked radiant, unburdened. It was the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. But what caught me off guard wasn't the expression, it was the reflection in the glass behind her. A man seated close, his arm resting behind her shoulders. His face was half visible, enough to tell he wasn't just a friend. I clicked through photo after photo, each one a gut punch. Her in a hotel robe, sitting cross-legged on a plush bed. A dinner plate for 2. A blurry selfie taken from too low an angle where a man's jawline and stubble could just be seen next to her cheek. She hadn't bothered to name the album, but she'd favorited half the pictures. Then came the audio clip. It was in her saved messages. Maybe she had forwarded it to herself from another device, or maybe she just liked hearing it again. Either way, it played without warning. Rachel's voice? Clear, laughing, a little breathless. "I haven't felt like myself in years," she said. "With you, I can just breathe. I don't have to edit my words. I don't have to be the wife or the mom, I can just be." "Rachel." A male voice, soft but deep, murmured something I couldn't quite make out. She laughed again. I know. But I'm scared, Travis. What if he finds out?" "Travis." I paused the recording. My heart felt like it had stopped. She had a name. A real person. This wasn't abstract anymore. This wasn't a suspicion or a theory. It was a man. A voice. A relationship. I closed the tablet slowly, carefully, like I might break it if I moved too fast. My legs felt numb. My hands were trembling, but not from rage, from the hollow space inside my chest where trust used to be. That afternoon, she came home as if nothing had happened. She walked through the door smiling, carrying little bags like she'd been at a boutique, not a hotel suite in another state. "I brought something for the kids," she said, pulling out coloring books and a souvenir magnet from the airport gift shop. The trip was so relaxing. Just what I needed. She looked tan. Her hair was different. She smelled like expensive shampoo. She moved around the kitchen humming like her conscience was spotless. I watched her from the doorway. She caught my eye and smiled, walking over to kiss my cheek. "You look tired. Rough weekend?" I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. She kept talking. "We should do a beach trip, just us. Once the kids are back in school. I think we need it." She said it with a straight face. I nodded. She didn't ask what I did over the weekend. She didn't notice how quiet I was. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Maybe she thought she'd gotten away with it. That night, I lay in bed beside her while she scrolled through her phone, thumb dancing across the screen. I could hear her breathing slow, even. At one point, she let out a quiet laugh. Probably a text from him. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how long it had been going on. How many nights like this had passed without me knowing. How many moments I'd shared with someone who was already halfway gone. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the Macy she gave to someone else without even telling me she was withholding it from me. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about the little things, how she started locking her calendar, how she muted all her group chats during dinner, how she began referring to her job with vague phrases like team stuff and quick update calls. I thought about the months I spent trying to figure out what was wrong, blaming myself, wondering what I wasn't doing right. But now I knew. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't finding herself. She had found something or someone else. The next morning, I woke up early. She was still asleep, curled up with the comforter pulled over her head like a child hiding from consequences. I got dressed quietly, made coffee, and packed the kids' lunches. I kissed them goodbye like any normal Tuesday, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Because now it wasn't about suspicion. It was about what I was going to do with the truth. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was pretending I didn't know. I went through the next few days like I was moving underwater, slow, heavy, disconnected. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring into my coffee as Rachel breezed past with a cheerful good morning that barely touched the air. She didn't notice when I stopped responding with anything more than a grunt or a nod. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. She seemed lighter than she had in months. Whatever weight she had been carrying while sneaking around had lifted. She smiled more. She started wearing new colors, brighter, bolder. She even hummed while brushing her teeth. Meanwhile, I felt like I was fading into the background of my own life. I didn't say a word about the photos, the voice memo, or the hotel itinerary. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to see what she'd do if I gave her nothing, no guilt, no confrontation, no resistance. Just silence. And that silence became my power. She didn't push. She didn't ask if I was okay. Maybe she thought I was just tired. Maybe she chalked it up to work stress or fatherhood. Or maybe, and this is the one that gutted me the most, maybe she didn't care anymore. I stopped trying to bridge the gap. I stopped reaching for her hand when we walked beside each other. I stopped leaving the porch light on when she worked late. I stopped asking who she was texting. Instead, I watched. Not like a detective, but like a man witnessing a slow-motion ending he couldn't interrupt. The detachment was quiet at first. She didn't notice when I started sleeping on the edge of the bed or when I moved my toothbrush to the downstairs bathroom. She barely blinked when I stopped initiating conversation or touching her at all. She filled the void with noise, talking about errands, the kids' schedules, surface-level things. She was good at playing normal. But it wasn't just me pulling away. Rachel's social media changed. Slowly, subtly, like someone redecorating a room after a breakup. Our family photos began to vanish. The birthday post she made for me 2 years ago, gone. The photo of us on the deck during our anniversary dinner, archived. In their place, filtered images from conferences and workshops, selfies with women I'd never met, captions that read like motivational posters. And then there was him. Travis. He crept into her digital world like a shadow stretching across the floor. At first, he was just tagged in a group photo at a team-building event. Then he was mentioned by name, "Crush today's presentation with Travis." #growth mindset. Then came the photo of him laughing across a table from her at some trendy lunch spot, captioned, "Workdays don't have to be boring when your team feels like family." Family. It was almost poetic how casually she erased the one she already had. Our kids didn't understand the shift, but they felt it. I could tell. They'd ask where mommy was during dinner. "She's at work," I'd say. Again. Another seminar. The kind that started after 6 p.m. and didn't end until morning. I stopped trying to explain it. Kids are smart. They know when a hug isn't warm, when a smile doesn't reach the eyes, when a kiss on the forehead is a checkbox instead of affection. One night, I came home late from a client meeting and found her sitting in the living room, laptop open, a headset looped around her neck. She was in yoga pants and a loose sweatshirt, her feet tucked under her on the couch. She looked up and said, "Hey," like it was the first time she'd seen me that day. "Long call?" I asked. "Yeah," she replied without looking up. "Europe team. We're onboarding someone new." That was her new favorite excuse, onboarding. She used it so often it might as well have been a second job. I stood there for a moment, wondering if she'd ask about my day. She didn't. Just kept typing. I walked upstairs without another word. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something had shifted permanently. The love I used to feel, the desperate need to fix things, to pull her back, it was gone. Not out of anger. Not out of bitterness. Just gone. Like someone flipped a switch and the room went dark. The next morning, she left early. I heard her heels on the tile, the front door clicking shut, the silence that followed. I stayed in bed a few extra minutes, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles. I thought about the last time she told me she loved me. I couldn't remember when it was. Not the exact moment. Not even the week. That's how far we drifted, so far that even the echoes of affection had disappeared. At breakfast, I packed the kids' lunches in silence. I helped them find their shoes. I zipped jackets. I answered their questions with soft words and tighter smiles. But inside, I was rearranging furniture in my mind, moving pieces around in preparation for a life without her. I started logging her absences, not just physically, but emotionally. She missed dance recitals, parent-teacher meetings, playdates, all with perfectly rehearsed excuses. "Can you handle it this time?" she'd say. "I've got this thing I can't reschedule." There was always a thing. Meanwhile, I was showing up. Every day. I was there for drop-off and pickup, for tantrums and bedtime stories, for the messy middle of parenting where there's no script, just love. One night, I opened our family calendar and saw that she had RSVP'd maybe to our son's upcoming school play. Maybe. Like her own child's performance was a networking event she might squeeze in if time allowed. That was the moment I stopped asking her to show up. I made peace with the idea that she wouldn't. And she didn't. But here's the thing, once I accepted that, I stopped feeling hurt. The silence between us stopped feeling hollow. It felt clean. Like the absence of noise after a fire has burned out. Rachel didn't try to close the gap. She didn't ask why I stopped making her coffee. Or why I canceled our anniversary reservation. Or why the gifts under the tree that year only had the kids' names on them. She didn't say anything when I stopped wearing my wedding ring. She didn't even flinch. She was already somewhere else. With someone else. And she wasn't hiding it anymore. Travis started showing up in more than just photos. His name came up in conversations, slipped in casually like an old friend. Travis thinks the market's going to shift. Travis said that training format is outdated. Travis sent me this podcast link, it's so good. It was like she'd built a whole parallel life. A life where I was a footnote if I existed at all. She still lived here. Still used our coffee maker. Still folded laundry in the same room. But she wasn't with me. She hadn't been for a long time. I stopped wondering where she went on those weekends. I stopped checking the doorbell camera. I stopped refreshing her social media. Because I already knew the truth. And the truth was I didn't want her back. There comes a point when silence stops being survival and starts being strategy. I had spent weeks, maybe months, living in that gray area between suspicion and confirmation. Then the dam broke. The evidence was all there, tucked inside Rachel's tablet, echoed in her voice, scattered across photos and captions and notes left carelessly behind. Once the truth was undeniable, I stopped bleeding and started planning. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was dignity. Control. A way forward that didn't involve screaming matches or begging someone who'd already checked out to stay. If she wanted a new life with Travis, she could have it. But not without consequences. My first step was simple: information. I knew Travis worked with her, but I didn't know how closely. So I started where any modern man would. I Googled him. His LinkedIn came up immediately. Senior Strategy Consultant, North Division, Valor Partners. Same company as Rachel. Same division. I checked his profile photo. It was him, the man from the rooftop selfie, the one half reflected in glass, the sneakers by the hotel bed. Now I had a full name. Travis H. Weller. Valor had a policy page online, buried in their site footer under compliance and ethics. I downloaded it. 32 pages of dense HR lingo. But one paragraph jumped out at me. Romantic or in asterisk mate relationships between employees in the same reporting structure or within teams responsible for fiscal oversight must be disclosed immediately to HR. Undisclosed relationships are considered a breach of conduct and may be subject to investigation, reassignment, or termination. Rachel worked in finance operations. Travis worked in strategy with reporting overlaps. It wasn't just an affair, it was a compliance violation. I printed the policy, circled the section, and started collecting timestamps. The hotel booking confirmation. The photo metadata. The voice memo. Her seminar flyers, some of which were fake, by the way. I found one she'd shared on Facebook with a bold, "In Atlanta for growth and grit," caption. I reverse searched the graphic. It was a template. Sold online for $4.99. She hadn't even tried to cover her tracks. That's what shocked me the most, not the betrayal, but the laziness of it. Part of me wondered if she wanted to get caught. Maybe she needed an excuse to blow everything up. Or maybe she just thought I was too dull, too docile, too exhausted to notice. If so, she underestimated me. I created a folder on my computer, plainly labeled Admin Docs. Inside were subfolders: photos, recordings, travel logs, compliance policy, social posts. I documented everything down to the screensh asterisk T. I kept my notes clinical. No emotion, just data. Like I was preparing a quarterly report, not tracking the disintegration of my marriage. Then I wrote the email. Not from my work address. Not from anything traceable. Just a fresh Gmail account with no name attached. The subject line read, "Internal relationship in violation of policy, confidential." In the body, I was brief and professional. I laid out the facts, the dates, the overlap in departments, the company policies. I attached the evidence, blurry enough to avoid legal problems, sharp enough to show intent. I ended with, "This relationship has created a conflict of interest and undermines company integrity. This should be investigated confidentially before it escalates further." I sent it to Valor's HR compliance inbox. Then I closed my laptop and took my kids to the park. It felt good, not in a petty way, but in a deeply satisfying, controlled way. For once, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't crying or confronting or collapsing. I was directing. Setting the board. Watching the pieces move. A few days later, I saw the first sign it had worked. Rachel came home tense. Her usual breezy energy was gone, replaced by stiff smiles and clipped phrases. She said she had a weird day, but didn't elaborate. That night, I overheard her on the phone in the garage. Her voice was low, urgent. "No, I didn't tell anyone. I swear. I don't know how they found out, Travis. Maybe someone saw something. No, I haven't talked to Jake. He's been distant, but not like that." She stopped talking when I opened the door. "What's going on?" I asked, playing dumb. She fumbled her phone into her back pocket. Work stuff, she said too quickly. Just a team issue. Don't worry about it. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and walked away. Let her wonder how much I knew. Let the silence stretch. Over the next week, the shift was undeniable. She started waking up earlier, checking emails in a panic. She took calls outside even in the rain. Her wardrobe went from soft pastels to sharp black blazers. She started talking about company restructuring and internal reviews like she was trying to convince herself it was no big deal. Then finally it happened. She came home late one night, eyes puffy, makeup smudged. She dropped her bag by the door and sat at the kitchen table without saying a word. I poured a glass of water and slid it toward her. Long day? She stared at the glass like it was a confession. Travis got suspended, she whispered. Pending investigation. I kept my expression neutral. For what? She hesitated. They said professional boundary concerns. Someone reported us. Reported you? I echoed, feigning confusion. She looked at me then, really looked. Like she was seeing me for the first time in weeks. Jake, did you? I let the silence answer. Her shoulders slumped. She looked 10 years older. Why would you do that? You tell me, I said calmly. Why would you give them a reason to investigate in the first place? She stared down at her hands, twisting her ring, still wearing it, strangely. Still playing the part. What happens now? She asked. I stood. Yeah? You deal with the fallout. That night, I slept like a stone. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about her. I didn't wake up replaying arguments or wondering what I missed. I just slept. In the days that followed, Rachel began to unravel. Her texts to Travis became less frequent. I saw the change in her face every time her phone buzzed, and it wasn't him. She tried to fill the space with us, with the kids. She offered to cook dinner, joined bedtime stories again, asked if I wanted to watch something on TV. But it was all wrong. All too late. I kept my answer short. Civil, distant. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't playing along either. I had already started my exit plan. I met with a lawyer. Quietly, during lunch breaks. I learned about financial protections, about how to trace asset movement. We had a prenup, a boring little document we both signed in better days. It stated that in the event of infidelity, the non-offending party retained the home and primary custodial rights, barring special circumstances. It was airtight. I had evidence. And I wasn't rushing. I was preparing. I began moving small funds into a private savings account. Nothing shady, just reallocations, slow and deliberate. I started backing up family photos, kids' school records, medical files. Anything that might be useful later. I also talked to a counselor. Not for me. For the kids. I wanted a professional in place before the storm hit. Someone to help them navigate what would come. Because it was coming. Rachel still didn't know. Or maybe she did. Maybe she felt the shift and just didn't want to name it. She asked me once in a quiet voice if we were okay. We're getting there, I lied. Because sometimes you have to keep people calm while you untangle the net. Because sometimes the cleanest way to leave is to let them think you're still staying. The fallout came faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks of the HR investigation, Travis was gone. Fired. His name wiped from the company's site like he'd never existed. Rachel didn't get the same treatment. She was technically in the clear, but the consequences echoed louder than any official reprimand. Her team was reorganized. She lost access to 2 key projects. Her manager stopped looping her into strategy calls. People who once adored her now spoke in hushed tones or avoided eye contact altogether. She wasn't fired, but she was exiled. And Travis, he didn't take the heat well. For a guy who wore confidence like cologne, he crumbled under pressure. Once the structure that protected him vanished, so did his charm. According to Rachel, he pulled back. No more late-night calls, no more flirty banter, no more plans. He says he needs space, she confessed one night, voice raw as if expecting sympathy. I didn't offer any. The irony wasn't lost on me how quickly her perfect escape fell apart once exposed to light. That's when her panic turned inward. She oscillated between accusation and desperation. One day she'd corner me in the kitchen, eyes blazing, demanding to know if I had set this up. The next, she'd whisper apologies through tears, begging to rebuild what she called our foundation. But there was no foundation left. By the time she started spiraling, I was already steps ahead. The divorce papers had been drafted. Finances moved into a protected trust. I had full documentation, photos, timelines, correspondence. I filed for full custody of the kids under the infidelity clause of our prenup. Our lawyer presented everything in court, calm, precise, undeniable. The house remained with me. She protested, but the agreement we signed years ago was clear, fidelity mattered. And she broke it. In the end, she had a choice, walk away quietly or drag herself through a public mess she couldn't win. She walked. Quietly. 6 months passed like a long exhale. Rachel moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. The court granted her visitation rights, alternate weekends, supervised at first. I didn't push for that, but I didn't fight it either. The kids adjusted better than I expected. They were young enough to adapt, old enough to sense that peace had returned. I poured myself into rebuilding, not just my home, but myself. I fixed the broken gate she used to remind me about. Repainted the hallway. Took down our wedding photos and replaced them with the kids' drawings framed like art. It was quiet, but it was mine. Business picked up. I got offered a part-time teaching role at the university nearby, something I never considered until now. Sharing what I knew, guiding younger minds, it gave me a sense of purpose that had long gone dull. The summer after the divorce, I took the kids to the coast. Just the 3 of us. We played in the surf, built sandcastles, ate too much ice cream. One morning, I walked into a beachside cafe to grab coffee and saw her, Rachel, seated alone on the patio. She was stirring a drink, looking out at the waves. No phone, no company. Just her. She looked thinner, maybe tired. Not broken. Just faded. She didn't see me. I stood there for a beat longer than I should have, then turned and walked the opposite way, letting the breeze hit my face. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. No bitterness. No longing. Just freedom.